In this video, we will learn how to associate side effects, such as this one, to certain changes in the data that powers a given component. For that, we will use a parent component called app. App has a private state called number. Number starts at 1. We have a button here that allows to increment the number, and another button there that allows to reset the number back to 1. App renders a child component called user. User takes an ID. We will just pass in the number. The way user is implemented right now, it simply outputs this JSX. Let's take it for a drive, and that seems to be working. We will complicate things a little bit by allowing the user component to be rendered only if the number is smaller than 4. That sounds pretty arbitrary, but will allow us to inspect really closely the whole cycle of life and death of this particular component. Let's take that for a drive, and the child component is gone. We will make another change so the number starts at 4. That will cause the application to initialize with the user component unmounted. In order to display the user, all we need to do is reset, and now we can increment, and cause the child component to become unmounted again. We will give the user the capability of displaying the user in either red or green. For that, we will have user hold a slice of state called color, which holds the current color. Of course, we need buttons to change the color and a little bit of style. Let's take that for drive. Let's change colors there. Cause a change in ID. Unmount the component, and that all seems to be working. Now we will focus our attention to the user component. Suppose we want to associate side effects to certain changes in the data that powers this component. We know we can use useEffect to run these effects. The reason we use useEffect is if we just type out our side effect right there, that will cause it to run before React has had a chance to update the DOM. So the correct way to do it is to invoke useEffect to schedule the desired effect to happen later. The whole process of rendering a component will work like this. Something will change, either props.id or the color. That will cause the whole function to run again. An effect, represented by this callback, will be scheduled to rerun after React is done updating the DOM. JSX will be calculated and React elements created. Those will be compared against the results of the previous render. If changes are in order, React will update the DOM, and then this callback will be executed. This particular console log will run after the first render and after all subsequent renders in a similar way. Let's take that for a drive by resetting. The child component rendered for the first time, and that triggered this effect to be executed. Let's change something like the color, and that caused another render, more DOM surgery, and the callback to be executed again. Let's increment the counter, same thing. Now, if I increment counter again, the effect won't be running because the whole component is about to become unmounted. Now, what if we want to schedule an effect that happens after first render only? We could do that very simply by using the second argument of useEffect. The second argument will be an empty array. Take it for a drive, and of course, we see both effects running after DOM surgery caused by the first render. However, if I make subsequent changes, we won't be seeing this effect running ever again. Now, what if we want to schedule an effect that happens only after renders caused by changing color? In first render, of course. It would look like this. We would add the second argument there and put color instead of the array. So when we use this array as the second argument, whatever we put in there is a thing which, if changes, the effect should be run. Let's take that for a drive, commenting out this one first for a little bit of extra clarity. If we increment the counter now, we can see nothing is happening. If we change the color, however, we can see these changes happening. If we keep doing green, nothing happens because no dumb surgery happened in response to a change in this component. Now, what if we want to schedule a side effect that takes into account changes in props.id only? You get the idea. Start the application, we see all three effects running as a consequence of first render. Change color, that guy triggers. Increment ID, that guy triggers. You get the idea. Of course, we can add more elements to this array, and that will make this effect to be executed if any happen to change. For example, I could do comma color, and this would mean first render or render caused by ID change or color change. So there you have it. Now you know how you might associate particular side effects to particular changes in the data.